Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. And this is episode 87. I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
So, guys, I am the Doctor.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. So, listeners, today is Doctor Who episode. Again, it's bizarre, mind-boggling that this wasn't episode 12 instead of episode 87. But we're here finally.
Well, it was your idea, too.
To talk the Doctor.
That's
yeah,
right.
and I'm not really even the Whovian of the crowd. That's you two guys that really know this thing better than I do.
I know it well, but I'm late to the party compared to Robert, because you watched them during the rerun experience.
Very little. I did watch some during, but it wasn't really that often. I do remember watching some of the Fourth Doctor.
Which was, in many respects, still considered to be...
Of the original run, he's the gold standard, probably.
Yeah.
But that depends. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about how they prefer the Second Doctor or the Third Doctor. Not too many prefer the Fifth, Sixth, or Seventh Doctors, though.
Peter Davison's got a good following.
He does.
Yes.
But Sixth or Seventh, I hate to say that.
It just depends.
Okay, nobody likes the Sixth. We can agree with that. That's not true either.
That's probably not true.
Well, Colin Baker got a short shrift. That's not his fault. He was a fine actor and is a fine actor.
Yeah.
It's just,
well, in many ways, Sylvester McCoy got a little bit of a short shrift.
He did too. That's correct. He was he's fantastic.
But really, the guy who got the shortest shrift was Paul McGann,
who happens to actually be my favorite, gentleman. I'll give you that. I'm saving that confession for later.
Hold on, before we get there.
Jump the gun. Episode's over.
Yeah.
Sorry, but
listeners, if you're not familiar with Doctor Who,
yes,
it is.
And if you're not, who the hell are you? Why are you listening to this podcast?
Listening to us? But it's a long-running British science fiction program with the gimmick of the character undergoes a transformation called regeneration.
Yes,
that allows them to switch actors whenever they please,
and personalities too. It's not they're not playing the same character. It is the same character, but he's totally new, and they get to play
or
to
she.
this. Or she, yeah, that's right.
And
now she,
that's right.
Now they get to and the idea being it refreshes the program,
but keeps all the memories
and keeps the memories
and the experiences. So it's they were able to the Doctor is David Tennant said he was 903 years old as the 10th Doctor, so you can figure out where that how that goes.
Yeah, the current Doctor is well over 2,000 years old.
Right. See, so it's there's all sorts of playing with that sort of stuff, but that's what's so cool about it.
So how did this start out?
The BBC wanted a science fiction show. It was a family show.
Yeah, it was intended for kids.
That's correct.
Originally. And a woman named Verity...
Lambert.
Lambert, thank you. Yeah. She was the producer. And matter of fact, I don't know if you saw it, you probably did not, but there was a special called Through Time and Space.
Yes.
That had... it was basically the story about how the Doctor came about.
Yeah, exactly.
It was fascinating.
Very much so.
Because they didn't get a whole lot of support. And it was intended to actually have a little bit of educational element, too, with all of the time travel.
Right. Because a science fiction show that would appeal to the family and get people interested in what was going on in science at the time. And in 1963 or 4, there's a lot going on in science at the time.
Yeah. Well,
you're ramping up the space program, nuclear weapons, and the whole bit.
Well, it's post Sputnik. I mean, if you remember the first Toy Story, it kind of lays it out pretty well. Because of the launch of the Sputnik space satellite, the very first one, all of a sudden you've created a shift on the ground where westerns and all that stuff is waning, and science fiction is starting to wax. And this was an outgrowth of that. This is not that many years later. They realized, science fiction's got some stuff here, and it's very educational. That was kind of what they're trying to do with it. And they captured lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. Because it's the same pot as Star Trek and Planet of the Apes.
Predates those, too.
But yes, it's earlier than both.
Yeah. It's earlier than just about any U.S. Modern science fiction show.
Yes.
And by modern, I mean anything that really is like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and Beyond.
Yeah,
anything Irwin Allen forward.
Yeah, well, that one, it's interesting you say that. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea premiered in 1964.
Right.
Which is, you might mark that. We've done the Twilight Zone. but that's not really
That's
that.
sci-fi horror.
That's
That's
almost
sci-fi suspense.
Yeah, and speculative fictions
Yeah.
at best.
Yeah.
It's not hard sci-fi. Voyage of Odyssey was a good transition for that because it didn't start out quite that way. It was kind of a Cold War thing, but they transformed it over that. And by the time it's finished in '69, it's the change is complete.
Yeah, I mean, other than the hokey things with the spaceships, the rockets on the wires that you can see, with the flames shooting out, that shoot out and then go up because that's what flames do.
Yeah.
When in space there is nothing like that.
Right.
Aside from the hokey stuff.
Anything that posts the Flash Gordon serials.
Yeah,
That's very
But
true.
again, it's the same melting pot as Stan Lee and Marvel.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
The comics again are also drawing from the same wellspring of nuclear tests and space race and all that stuff.
right. But they still take an oddball slant on it. You
Yes.
know, it's not about a space program. It's not about scientists. He's an explorer, and he's got his granddaughter with him.
Sorry, it's not even about Earth, which is, I mean,
He's not a human.
he's not a human.
Well, initially we don't know that. So
That's correct.
Right.
That was developed because
Yeah.
we weren't quite sure what all that was. It's anchored in the British community, yes, because you want that familiarity, but they're the observers of him.
Yeah.
They're the companions of him. It's very British if you watch the series for very long, especially by the time you get to the Third Doctor. For like 4 years of John Pertwee's thing, he's grounded on Earth because that was a budget issue. That's one of the things that was really weird about Doctor Who is the budget was sucked. It was nothing. I mean, it was you got those guys just like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea had no budget, so you get the guys in the silly costumes. That are these aliens.
Well, and the sets. Are so plain. When you look at the control room of the TARDIS, the spaceship, the time and spaceship, it's very plain in those early days.
Yeah.
And the control panel, it's this 6-sided thing.
Yeah.
And how that came about was Verity Lambert went to our prop department saying, look, you have been told you need to give me prop designs.
Yeah.
I need the control panel. We don't have anything to build. And so the guy, he's like on his lunch break or something, so he puts these things together in this little 6-sided platform on a pedestal. And, eventually that, very quickly by the carpenters and whoever builds the props, turns into the control panel. And it is, of course, you got the little colander inside the part that goes up and down that makes the noise. That's very endemic of how they treated
necessity had to be the mother of invention here. But it could have been absolutely ridiculous. In times, if you look at it, just visually, it is. But it's the stories and the concepts that made this fly as long as it has.
It's sort of like the kid playing with the cardboard box in his front yard.
Yes.
But in this case, the kid's got the support of some really great writers.
That's correct. I mean, there's some serious folks in there. And they realized Verity Lambert created a very flexible concept.
Yeah.
And that's what helped them, because it should have ended after 3 years when William Hartnell says, well, I'm not in the greatest of health. He's the first Doctor. I need to
and
get
they
out
weren't
of here.
exactly unhappy to see him go.
They weren't.
He was a little touchy to work with.
He was, and to be honest, there's so many things that he didn't bring that they didn't know they needed. By bringing in Patrick Troughton afterwards, who created a completely different character, and yet it's the same. They're almost not. It reinvigorated the series, and all of a sudden you've got new viewers saying, "Wow, this is the same show, but it's different."
You get to take it and do whatever you want with it.
Well,
and that becomes really the concept is this fella's an alien without a name other than the Doctor.
Yeah.
And he is pulling humans, Londoners, essentially, along with him.
Yeah.
It became known as the Companions.
Yeah. exploring both time and space.
Yep.
Whichever one you wanted to do.
You got right, and the time travel meant they could go anywhere and see anything.
A lot of the early seasons did a lot of British history stuff because that's what the viewers knew.
Right,
It's
which
easy
makes
to
sense.
do.
That's
You've
right.
got the sets, you've got the costumes.
That's
go
exactly
for it.
right. Let's. It's real cheap. Let's. They're in the BBC archives there somewhere. That's why you have him meet Richard the Lionhearted and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not a lot. There was more time in those earlier ones than there were space.
Yeah.
That came later because the change writers there are so often, but they don't want to get too stale, and sometimes they would.
Well, and they also, they were also aware, I think, of being too goofy looking.
Mm-hmm.
And the best example of being too goofy looking is the original Cybermen.
Yes.
Because you can tell they're guys in a some kind of knit stocking with a metal cap over their head, and
things sticking out their ears.
yeah. Now, granted, they did what they could with what they had.
And they actually brought back those original Cybermen in the later series.
Yes.
And did them a little bit better, mind you.
Well,
but
yeah. Well, actually, you mean the design?
the design, exactly.
Yeah. Actually, not that long ago, just a couple of years ago.
Exactly, yeah.
Which was really good. Showed a great continuity.
Yeah.
Which is always a great thing in science fiction.
Well, that's actually been. You would think that would be an anchor. I mean, a boat anchor type of a drag, but it's not. It's actually a very helpful thing. It's like a hub that they can work through. It does require, after all these years, some people paying some serious attention. But the people creating the series now, they were fans as kids.
Yeah.
And they grew up with it.
Yeah.
That's the history eventually reaches critical mass.
Right.
And you've got that.
If you're not familiar, listeners, the original BBC program ran to, was it 89?
87, I think it was.
Something like
like
87 or 89.
So like
Yeah.
64 into the 80s.
Right, yes.
And then, again, budget, BBC,
They
lots of other
tried
things.
to bring it back in 96.
Yeah, they
with
pull
Paul
it.
McGann.
They pull it. They do a TV movie in 96 with Paul McGann.
Set here in the U.S., they monkeyed with the concept a little. Supposedly, when he came back, he was half human, only had one heart. They kind of ditched that with
Pretty much, yeah.
when they used Paul McGann's character for audiobooks and his next appearance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So, but that didn't really work out at that moment as a pilot for a Reborn series.
Right.
But eventually, in the 2000s, it would be reborn.
2005.
Yeah.
Russell T. Davis, who was the guiding force behind bringing it back because he was a well-known and respected producer at the BBC who loved the Who series. He had enough clout to say, I want to do this. And they said, oh, okay, you're Russell T. Well, okay, you own it. It's not like you had to worry about paying anything for it. Let's try this. And, of course, it was a huge hit. And part of that had to do with, I think, they cast well. That's always been the series. That's one of the things they do well is they really have a great top-notch cast and a creative team. Because Christopher Eccleston was amazing. My first Doctor Who I ever watched was actually Eccleston's. I never watched any of the classic Who. I knew of it, but I was never able to see it.
Yeah,
I watched a little of it, but not a whole lot.
Yeah. When
I am mostly a new series.
Yeah.
Because they did eventually broadcast some of the originals in the U.S.
Yes.
on PBS.
On PBS, that's
Yes,
right.
and
because
that's where
they
I
were-
saw
That's where you
back
would
in the
see-
80s.
Yeah,
And
because
of
they
course-
were cheap.
Yeah.
Now, I have seen quite a few of them since I started watching.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I
at some
wouldn't-
point, I want to watch all of them from the very beginning.
I got them all, the DVDs, boys.
Yeah, I've got-
Yeah, I was going to say, you
I've
probably
And
actually-
got
there are still some missing episodes.
Yes,
too.
there are.
They're
they have
working on
done
that.
cartoons,
Yes.
animations of some of them, because they have audio, I think, for almost all of them, if not all of them.
Because fans, that's the only way they could relive them, is they would audio tape them.
Yeah.
Well, those have survived, and they've been turned back
Well,
into...
some of these, I think, are not fan audio. These are BBC audio.
Exactly. All of the above. It depends on what they can get their hands on.
Yeah. They're. I think 3 lost episodes were found in Africa or someplace
That's
where
true.
the BBC had loaned them out to a local network.
Right. The reason those episodes
And
got
never
lost...
got 'em back.
The reason those episodes got lost is, by the time... And it's only the first 2 Doctors you have the issue with. After
Yes.
after John Pertwee starts, you don't have the issue, because it's all color then. But before that, they had a tape shortage. They had to reuse tape,
Yep.
film, so they tape over these things.
Yeah, not film, tape.
Tape,
Yeah,
exactly. That's
it's
what they were
like your
filmed on.
VHS, where you can re-record. That's what they did.
That's what they were using at the time. And they fixed that with John Pertwee. In fact, John Pertwee's first episode, Spear in Space, is actually filmed on high-quality movie grade film. It's the first one to do that, and if you watch it, you can tell. Yeah, that they spent some money on that one.
Yeah.
Now it was different after that. It was actually done on location and things like that. You can certainly watch.
Yeah,
the
they
quality
definitely varied. Sometimes it's monsters, and sometimes it's space, and sometimes it's a history episode. And,
Yeah. Well, and during
they
John
did
Pertwee's run, it was very much I'm a James Bond kind of character.
Yeah, man of action. That's what they
It's
call him.
Yeah, an action
and
figure type.
I love Pertwee. He's one of my favorite doctors. He was suited for that. They took the actor, and part of it was they cast him for that reason. They wanted to go that way, but he did a fantastic job. Fantastic job. And he's the second longest serving doctor.
Yeah.
5 years,
But it definitely went through kind of its man from Uncle phase.
Well, that's part of it too. That's exactly right, and that's just a product of the time. By the time he's finished, then you've got Tom Baker, which arguably of the classic series is considered to be not only the best Doctor, he's certainly the longest. He's 7 years, but the high point of some of the writing that was going on.
Yeah.
Douglas Adams was writing at one point for some of these folks who did Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Some of these stories are amazingly high sci-fi that they pull off on a budget that you just can't believe.
Yeah.
There's nothing. But because of the writing, and the issue with these was this is a serialized format. It's 22 minutes, 30 minutes with commercials. Like 5 episodes. Sometimes they do 7. Sometimes they do less than that. But that's one story in a serialized fashion, with cliffhangers at the end of each one, so you tune in the next time.
Yeah.
So it was, if you watch those old episodes, it's not standard fare for American audiences.
Right.
Now, by the time they do the reboot in 2005, it's the same 43 minutes, hour long. That it's one story. There may be some connections between episodes, but
But generally, things wrap up by the time you're at the end of an.
Although they seasonalize meta stories.
Yeah.
They'll have a meta theme that some of these will connect with. Some are standalones, some are 2 parts, some will build by the time the season ends. You're paying off threads you've dropped.
Yeah, they've done that more and more as the years have gone on. But the first 3 seasons, well, the second and third season they did that less than they did in the first, because the first was all about Bad Wolf.
Right. Yeah, that was Christopher Eccleston's and Billy Piper.
Second and third was less about that. Fourth was definitely dropping those hints and plot lines, and they did it to varying degrees. I think probably most people that have watched both probably prefer the newer one, but there's always, and I know we've just alienated half of them, because the other half are going to say, no, it's the old Doctor and only the old Doctor.
Yeah.
But they both have their good points. Mm-hmm. The new one's it's far more polished.
It is.
Is the thing.
That's part of it. And they got a budget, for goodness sakes. That has a lot to do with it. And it's also become a phenomenon again, which it was a sideline.
They have a worldwide audience now,
that's
too.
Right. That's right.
It's popular in the U.S. at the moment. This is not...
Well, and
years later, a few on PBS.
Well, thank you for
cable TV,
BBC America, and certain other things like that. Because when 2005, when the first one comes out, they had no way of getting it over here. They had to sell the rights to the Sci-Fi Channel. Mm-hmm. Remember that? That's the only way you could see them, and that's after it's all done. 3 years later, David Tennant is doing his 4 movies, which was kind of like his 4th season, but not really. You remember that, the Next Doctor and all that stuff. It was the Christmas special with him is not broadcast until almost Easter in America.
Right.
You couldn't get, this is before you had same real-time stuff.
Yeah.
And you didn't even have a place to put it. That's where you had
and then they got to the point where, all right, we'll release it on the same day, but it's still 8 p.m. in both countries.
Yeah.
So, it releases at 3 o'clock in the afternoon U.S. time in Great Britain, and then 5 hours later we get to watch it.
Right.
Although, by that point, people were ripping it off television and putting it on the internet.
Streaming and internet,
that's right.
everything changes all of that.
Exactly. So they figured out there's better ways to do this.
Yeah, so then eventually it's just all at the same time, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, again, this character gets to go through personality and appearance changes. He's a space traveler,
Time Lord.
Time Lord.
That's what
He
he
can
is,
do all these things. But who came up with the regeneration gimmick? Was that Verity Lambert, or was that?
It was the
was that
producers at the. They didn't call it regeneration at first, but it was just, we got to figure out how do we bring this other guy in, Patrick Troughton, because William Hartnell, he had some health issues. He was, as you say, he was hard to work with. He wanted out, so they did this final serial called The 10th Planet, where he collapses and changes into Patrick Troughton.
Well, initially, I think they were going to have Patrick Troughton just, change the actor.
Right.
But, and I don't know who did this because I have to go back and watch the show, but somebody came up with the idea, well, this is sci-fi.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be
That's right.
exactly the same?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be just change the actor with no comment and everything's the same.
Right.
This gave them the opportunity to change everything.
Yeah, it's
they
a
did.
genius gimmick.
It's a genius gimmick because
that
Patrick
allows you then
Troughton
to
is
start
nothing
over.
like William Hartnell. William Hartnell was a space curmudgeon,
Yes.
and Patrick Troughton was a space hobo.
Yeah.
Well, that was his appearance, but he wasn't.
But that's correct. He's as usual. The Doctor has certain consistencies throughout all his incarnations. He's always the smartest man in the room.
Yes.
He's always got a plan. He's already figured out what you're going to do and what he needs to do. It's rare that he's ever surprised.
And as River says, the Doctor always lies.
That's correct. That's right. That's right. There's all sorts of stuff like that, and it enabled them to write differently. And I'm not sure how. I think that's organic, based on the actor.
Yeah.
By the time John Pertwee comes in, they've done this before, and they realize, well, we want to do this. We cast him this way. He's going to be this man of action. They ended up stranding him on Earth for like 3 years because of a budget issue. So they couldn't go out into space. Now his last 2 years, they lifted that, and he did some space travel and time travel. And actually, some of the best stuff he did was those last 2 years with Sarah Jane as his companion.
The
They're
great
all
and wonderful Elizabeth Sladen.
it was fantastic. May she rest in peace. She was one of the very best.
She's probably one of the most favored companions.
Yeah, that's right. Among many, because there are others. Joe Grant before her was with John Pertwee was excellent as well. Katie Manning. There's lots of. In fact, Lala Ward married Tom Baker while they were playing together on.
Yes,
on
they
screen.
were playing together, so they got married, so they
That's
could
right.
play together.
That's
Well, that
exactly
was
right.
my next question, was about the companions.
Yes.
One, what role does the companion play? And just to explain the idea.
It's a foil for the Doctor, but it didn't start out that way. It was meant to be the human British audience inserting themselves into the adventure. That's what it started out as.
And it still does that to a
and it
degree.
still does that to a degree.
It lets the audience be in the adventure.
But it creates a form of moral compass sometimes, conflict.
Donna Noble
sometimes.
especially was the restraint on David Tennant's
That's
Doctor.
correct. But see, that evolves organically both in the writing room and with the performances too.
Yeah.
And that sometimes I mean, I can't tell you the evolution once they start writing it, but most of these things are tightly scripted. At least the new ones are. They know exactly what they're going with before that. But I think they're pretty clear about how things have to end up. But the companion and companions, sometimes they would change too.
Yes.
Part of it was audience reactions. And I know that the fourth Doctor starts out with Sarah Jane, but he also has the Doctor guy, the Scottish guy that's with him, and I swear I cannot remember his name.
I don't remember his name.
Yeah, he's with him for like that first season, and he just wasn't that popular. He's kind of annoying. Nothing on the actor. He's a fantastic actor, and I cannot remember his name. Because they do one of the best of the series in that first season of the Fourth Doctor, Genesis of the Daleks. And because also the companions great, the villains are excellent too. And the Daleks turn out to be something
Because they revisit, they revisit these villains over and over.
Well,
and over
when you get
with
it
new
right,
stories and new
sometimes
stories.
they'll create one and they'll come back later, and sometimes they won't. Sometimes some of the ones they created in the 70s, but it's only the nostalgia in the 2000 teens that somebody says, oh, let's go back and grab the Zygons. We haven't done a Zygon episode. the Zygons weren't all that
Yeah.
interesting. Unlike, there's always a Dalek episode. Every Doctor has fought the Dalek at least once.
Yeah.
Quick bit of trivia: who fought them the most? That would be John Pertwee. He had 3, and whereas even Tom Baker only had 2.
Yeah.
No, excuse me, 4 for John Pertwee and 3 for Tom Baker. But yeah, it's still the same.
But yeah, the Daleks, and these other villains is really interesting. Sometimes they're a villain of the Doctor, and sometimes they're a villain to the humans.
That's right.
And the Doctor's taking up for the humans.
Right.
And so there's always this interplay of trying to figure out.
They're almost always
They go after
non-human.
they go after the humans to get at the Doctor sometimes.
Right, but I mean, there probably is somewhere a villain who is strictly human, especially for Pertwee because he's on Earth the entire time.
Sure, but he's not always fighting those type of. Sometimes he is,
but especially the new series since 2005, it's pretty much. Aliens are always the villains, even though they may look human.
Yeah.
Just like the Doctor looks human.
right? But most of them don't. That's something very unique. They would spend money on costuming like you wouldn't believe on some of these things because their villains had to be the monster of the week. In the 70s in particular, they wanted that alien look.
The Daleks still look like a large trash can with a plunger sticking
Well,
out.
the pepper pots they've been called. Which is what they were. I mean, that's how they created them, and it just kind of they wanted that otherworldly look. Whereas Star Trek went the opposite direction. They wanted that human look. That you land on planets and there's other humanoids everywhere. It's cheap.
Well,
yeah.
it's true for Doctor Who as well.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody's humanoid. Now, Doctor Who has the advantage of you say, well, you humans have just gone everywhere, and basically one of them says, you've slept with everything, so everybody looks like you.
Yeah. Which is, because when you're doing time, you've got that option. Time is not fixed, whereas in Star Trek it is.
Yeah.
You got, my lord, some of the best stuff they've done. They went to the year, 1 trillion with Martha, when he met with the Master. Get another great villain.
I don't know that it was that far along, but yeah, it was basically when the universe was compressing upon itself.
Right. Yeah. It's a trillion was something. I don't remember the number, but it was the trillion word was used, which is like supposedly you're not supposed to go that far. Of course, you're not supposed to do that. Of course, the Doctor's going to do that. That's one of my very favorites. John Sim did an amazing job. Well, Sir Derek Jacobi did as well as the Master.
The Master,
some of my very favorite episodes.
So we drifted into villains, but I want to go back to the companions again to talk about their role and again their personalities vary as they change the characters around.
Yeah.
Again, Donna Noble, very different from
Martha
and from Rose,
Right.
and really different from Amy Pond.
That was deliberate with the change in Doctor. They wanted a very different companion with Matt Smith.
Yeah.
Built a romance that a lot of people thinking, I don't think we really want to do that. That's kind of weird. So they brought in her boyfriend Rory.
Yeah.
Changed the dynamics back,
Yeah.
and it was good. It worked out. I thought. I
Yeah.
thought she did. I think Amy gets a short shrift at times. I think Karen Gillian is one of the most amazing actresses.
I don't know
out
who
there.
gives her short shrift. I think she's one of the best companions
I have
ever.
heard a lot of hate on her for some strange reason.
Well, she's certainly the actress parlayed the part.
Correct. That's right.
Into
It's not
huge
her that
jump.
people don't like. They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't like Amy Pond. It's a jab against the writers for whatever reason. I don't understand that.
Residual wise, Karen Gilliam never has to work a day in her life.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, because
Between
programmings are done differently.
Nebula.
Playing Nebula and Amy Pond, residuals will keep her set for life.
That's right. But she's still working and she's still excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's got a whole other series too. She's in the Jumanji.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So
that's right. She's
many
done
of
that.
those as they can crank out. She
Well,
can be in those and make
Sure,
money.
absolutely. Yeah. Well,
She was in a very short-lived episodic comedy here in the U.S. It was
John Chu,
Yes.
and it was
she's basically an airhead slut. I mean, that's the best way to describe it.
which is a shame because she's a fine actress and she's shown she can do some really great stuff
Do
like
more
that.
than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Companions, sometimes they're successful. Occasionally they're drop-ins and drop-outs. They got to see what sticks. Sometimes, but you don't have just the companions. Sometimes you have the supporting cast to the companions. That was not the case in the original series. Once the companion's with the Doctor, that's it. The two of them are together, and they just, or him and more than that, and they go everywhere. There's no connection backwards on the world that they leave behind.
Yeah. But eventually they would introduce
They changed that.
K9 and
Yes,
Unit, the
yeah,
extraterrestrial research crew on Earth.
Uh-huh.
So they could do some military style stuff.
That's right. Yes, most of that was with John Pertwee.
Yeah,
the
K9 was Tom Baker.
K9 was Tom Baker. That's right.
The robot dog.
Right.
Yep. Who's a good dog? Who's a good dog?
So again,
you have to be careful if he fouls the pavement, though. You'll slip on the ball bearings.
Yeah. So it definitely, again, changing the idea of what's going on, an explorer to a detective to man of action to this techno wizardry type stuff.
And sometimes they would go dark too. Sylvester McCoy, his was very much almost a Svengali-like manipulator, that he would do certain things, and that was deliberate on the part of the writers. I mean, McCoy doesn't come off that way, but he's very, and that was kind of a reaction against the Colin Baker before him, which they had taken things in a different direction and they had lost a lot of ratings. And again, Colin Baker's a fine actor, and he worked with what he had to work with. But the BBC lost faith in the series at that point. They went from they went from the serialized format to an hour. They cut the number of productions with them. A lot of the old writers had left. They brought in some others, and they tried to change things up, and it got a little silly at times. Just a costume that Colin Baker wore.
Yeah, that was I mean, Peter Davison's costume wasn't. It was definitely none of them.
Yeah,
wore decent costumes past Patrick Troughton.
I don't know. John Pertwee's wasn't too bad. Sometimes
Please. Ruffles.
Okay, well, this
velvet waistcoat. Come on.
I got it. But, hey, it was 73, 74.
Still.
But I mean, that's part of the idea is he's a man out of time, even in his appearance.
That's correct, yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of what is like Peter, or Christopher Eccleston doesn't work, kind of for me, is he's a guy in a t-shirt and a leather jacket. Well, that's not how the Doctor dresses.
They call him
U-boat captain.
He's a U-boat captain. That's what they call him. That's what. Which again, they really didn't know what they were going to do with him. It was a. I don't want to say a reboot, but it was.
No, it was because Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, not through his fault.
Yeah.
But this is the way it was written. Changed the Doctor dramatically.
Very much so.
Absolutely dramatically. His Doctor was an angry Doctor.
Yes, he was.
He was very angry because his was the first post-Time War Doctor.
Which was an invention to create that type of a Doctor.
And the Time War happened between Paul McGann's 8th Doctor and Christopher Eccleston's 9th Doctor. And all we knew about it was, it came out during that first season, he destroyed not only his people, but all the Daleks. Of course, he didn't really destroy all the Daleks because they show up. Yep. And so it turned the Doctor into a mass murderer. It was one of the things that I've always found very disturbing about the way they brought him back. He destroyed billions, if not trillions, of people in this act of ending the Time War, which itself was destroying all reality, was the whole idea. And he did this to save everyone else.
Yeah.
So he was very angry. He had PTSD.
Yeah.
Is essentially how you would put it.
Yeah. And he was the last of his race then.
And he thought he was the last of his race.
Yeah, it gave some dramatic possibilities for a while. But
it gave a lot of internal angst and conflict within himself. But one of the things that, one of the best lines from Christopher Eccleston's time as the Doctor is a great illustration of the anger of the original, or that original 9th Doctor, or, the original Doctor of the reboot. And that is when they're doing the two-parter where they're in World War II, and it's where Captain Jack Harkness is first introduced. And when they finally figure out how they're going to save everybody, the Doctor says, "Just this once, Rose. Everybody lives. Everybody lives."
Oh, it's a great moment. It's a fantastic moment.
It stands out because that's when you realize, my God, everywhere he goes, everybody dies.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize this ahead of time, but because this is the first time nobody dies, it's a big deal. And it's the first time he was actually happy because nobody died.
Yeah, and it's Russell T Davies, I think, wrote that. I may be wrong. But
I believe he did, yeah.
Yeah, but he was certainly the showrunner. And that was deliberate on his part. And he said that in interviews later.
Well, no, wait. Who's the guy after him?
You're exactly right. daggone, it's not Chris Chibnall. He's doing it right now.
No.
Stephen Moffat, thank you.
Moffat
wrote it. That's
Moffat
right.
wrote all the best ones.
He did. And,
Absolutely.
And Russell T says that. He didn't have to edit Moffat's, but that was a very... What Russell T wanted was he wants this... We're going to juxtapose this angry, angsty Doctor in order to give them that moment. And it was kind of like that, one of the best moments in that series.
And you see the progression of the Doctor from that angry Doctor. Because in the very first episode, he calls humans, these stupid apes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very belligerent with Rose, and she's like, well, you're not an alien. You sound like you're from the North. He's like, well, so what? Lots of planets have a North. He's very...
Because he's got a northern accent, Christopher Eccleston does, and they didn't mitigate that.
Yeah. Which to us, it still sounds British. So.
Exactly, yeah, that's right.
So he was very belligerent to everybody, and that softened over that 10 years. It's really a shame he did not want to come back. He did not.
He is talking about doing some of the audio adventures.
Yes, he's going to do audio, but he says he's never coming back to live action.
Right. Well, he had a bad experience for lots. And this has been well documented during his time there, and that's had a lot to do with it. But he was fantastic. He is a fantastic actor.
He is.
And I do want to make sure we mention the fact that these audio adventures are put out by a company called Big Finish. They have done hundreds of these audio plays with full casts, including whatever actor they've picked. I think all the living ones have done it.
Paul McGann has more time as the Doctor than anyone,
right? Because he
did all these audio programs,
and he does them. That's one of the reasons he's my favorite. I love him so much because he got the short shrift. It wasn't that, but when you hear those audio adventures, I've listened to many of them. Damn, he's good. They cast him right. He was the guy. Yeah. And he actually did get a swan song a couple of years ago when Matt Smith was about to finish his tenure. And they did the anniversary thing.
The 50th anniversary Day of the Doctor.
Right. Which was Night of the Doctor, was his little 6-minute ending, basically. Yeah. They actually filmed it, where how he basically dies and regenerates into what we thought would be Christopher Eccleston's. But, of course, they kind of retconned.
Well, we knew it wasn't coming to Christopher Eccleston, because we'd already seen John Hurt as the Doctor.
Right, at that point. That's correct. We knew that it had to be John Hurt's the War Doctor, who doesn't have a number, and we just
and they don't call him. Yes, all the other Doctors are ashamed of him.
Yeah,
because he's the mass murderer.
Right. Yeah, he's the one that did all that.
Right, but as it turns out, he didn't. Which is I am not a fan of retcons. That is the one retcon I am 100% behind.
Yeah,
because it fixed the character.
Correct. Yeah, you had to do that, and the first part of it was just ambiguous enough to give you the wiggle room to make that change. It wasn't as explicit as it could have been, thank God, because it just barely made it.
It's this great gimmick where you can go from that characterization with Christopher Eccleston to a David Tennant characterization that's so different.
Right, he's happy. He likes being the Doctor.
Right. But he still bears that guilt.
There's still some guilt.
Oh,
he
yeah,
still
absolutely.
bears the guilt,
and
but he's learned to live with it and go on.
That's right. Tennant's an amazing Doctor.
Which Eccleston does at the end. He's gotten that. But for David Tennant, the difference in character is great. But because David Tennant is such a great actor, he can still bring that anguish over what made Nine's Doctor have PTSD, and that's the great acting.
Yeah.
And even Matt Smith was able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will say that the current Doctor feels like she has absolutely no connection to past Doctors to me. So that I think more is mostly a writing issue.
Yeah,
because I think they wanted to make a total break.
It's a different showrunner too.
Right. It's a different showrunner.
And I'm guessing, I don't know this, but I'm guessing they thought that continuity does become a boat anchor sooner or later.
Which I think is BS.
Correct.
I think you are more creative when you have to come up with ways to work with it.
Absolutely.
Stay within the...
Right. But when, as the Doctor says to prospective companions, all of time and space, when that is your hook, you don't have any limitations.
That's exactly right. That's what's so really great, because there's been so
a big part of this is the companions know what's going on. They find out in some way or another.
Right.
Whereas other people in the orbit don't. They don't know.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Depends. Later,
if they're recurring, they do figure it out.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, he doesn't hide it necessarily.
Yeah.
He just doesn't go around advertising it.
Yeah. But it's a police box.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the chameleon circuit is broken.
Yeah, it's stuck there.
They don't get to change it around.
Yeah.
So, is it the greatest sci-fi ever?
Ooh.
Is it bigger than Star Trek? Is it?
In what way? As in,
you got to quantify
quality
that.
of sci-fi, the following, the impact.
I would think the quality. I think that'd be where I'd want you guys to comment.
You'd have to differentiate between production quality and
the
quality.
imaginative.
Well, yeah,
we're talking
writing.
stories.
Conceptual quality. You're talking about the quality of the concept and the execution thereof, whatever that looks like. There could be. You could make a very good argument that it is. Star Trek has certainly had more socialized impact, but let's be honest.
Country.
In this country.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
That's an American product. It had its own genesis, its own life, not the Genesis device, but its own genesis of how this works. But the British series suffered from a lack of distribution in its early days.
Yeah.
And production quality because it just didn't have the money. But by the time Russell T comes along, it's now worldwide. And it didn't start out quite that way, but now it is.
But they could because you know, technology.
Yeah, again, the
I would
streaming
say
and
that
everything.
yes, it probably is the greatest science fiction concept and execution combination. There may be better executions and there may be better concepts, but I don't think anybody has paired them together as well. Mm-hmm. It's got its low moments, absolutely.
Yeah,
but it's got its high moments. And honestly, I think most of the high moments are current run, the second generation. There's a lot of high moments, but there are a lot more low moments, silliness, I think, in that first run that drags that down.
Yeah, the first two Doctors, in many respects, that's where a lot of... They just hadn't figured it out yet.
But I think some of those are some of the best science fiction.
Sometimes they are.
I said some.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes there's... But there were more excellent stories written, I think, during the Tom Baker years.
Yes, there are great stories written there. Tom Baker's years, they really are the high watermark of the first generation, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I think 3 lost his way as far as the Doctor sci-fi concept because it's stuck on Earth.
Well, that's
doesn't mean it wasn't entertaining.
Yeah, by the time they lifted that restriction, he got much better, and he came into his own.
And companions also have a lot to do with it. The original companions were, by today's standards, a little staid, a little dry. They were teachers, along with his granddaughter. We still don't know who the mother is after all these years.
No.
But the father, whichever one would be whoever the child is. The granddaughter's parent.
We don't know how that came about. We do believe that in the time where David Tennant was leaving, when the Time War and the Master comes back and the Time War they unlock all that with Timothy Dalton was in the episode. Claire Bloom plays a woman who is supposed to have been the Doctor's mother.
Yes.
They don't explicitly say that.
Well, and that's the other thing about the current Doctor where they have broken with things. While it's not necessarily explicit, they have broken the history of the Doctor with some recent changes, which I'm not a fan of. I mean, it blows open the whole concept of what it means to be a Time Lord and who the Doctor is. But it's it's so out of left field. And honestly, while Jodie Whittaker is a fine actress, she really is.
Does a great job.
Love her in Broadchurch and with David Tennant and other things. But to me, she kind of falls flat as a Doctor. She's not my favorite. But I still watch them. So,
sure,
but they've changed that a little too fundamentally for me to really be a fan of that particular change. And I don't want to go into it because you start describing plots of sci-fi shows out loud to people. I discovered this once when our very good friend from Michigan trying to explain comic book plot story to him. And you realize, my God, it sounds like you're describing Days of Our Lives. Like a soap opera. Yeah. So it makes great sense while you're watching it. Makes great sense while you're reading it. But once you start trying to explain them to people, you realize how freaking stupid it all sounds. So no, I'm not going to try and go into it.
Yeah, and I think to its credit, it doesn't have too strong an element of the soap opera in it.
No, the current
And it
ones
was
don't.
just-
No.
Yeah.
It's the convolutedness of trying to explain,
Yeah.
there's all this history and, all these
Yeah.
other things.
The serialized format had a little of that with it, but they were self-contained.
Yeah.
Rarely would those things bleed over, although they would have sequels all the time, because if you had a particularly interesting monster, as Bugs Bunny would say, they would make an appearance back pretty quickly. The Daleks were just an obvious one.
Cybermen came back a lot.
Yeah.
It's just the Master. Those are probably the three biggies.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah, the Daleks especially. I think even if you don't know the Doctor, you've probably seen an image of the Daleks and you didn't get it, but that's everywhere.
The companions, to me, make the show.
Yeah.
You can't do Doctor Who without the companions because honestly, he's just not as interesting. You asked what the purpose of the companions were, and apologies, but I think you missed the point a little bit, or you just didn't get to it because we were kind of wandering all over the place.
Yeah.
Is probably more likely. The companions humanize the Doctor.
Yeah.
They don't make it so that we can relate to the Doctor so much as they make him relatable to us.
It could be a being of this incredible infinite power.
Right, and when depending on
displays some of
who's writing, he is a being of infinite.
Time Lord Victorious, as
Yes.
David Tennant would say.
And the companion reels him back in.
Yes.
Putting a limit
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time.
I just again, I'm not the Whovian. You guys are. The one I remember of some of the David Tennant stuff, but the episode with the Rachnos, the spider monsters, and Donna Noble introducing her, and he's wipes them all out, and she's like, "You can't do that."
Yeah, he's ready to. Yeah, because he's just this is right after he lost Billy Piper's companion, Rose.
Yeah,
This is in between, even though it's the third companion. It's the Christmas special,
Right.
So there's often a different companion for those.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was popular enough they brought her back later.
She was phenomenal. Catherine Tate is a national treasure for Great Britain in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she and David Tennant get along so well.
Because the character starts out a little dense.
Yeah.
Well, that's the storyline is she should get this and she doesn't.
And then of course her character ends up ends up having to be wiped. She goes back to that, and you can see the difference.
Yeah.
In when she goes back to that character, because again, don't want to explain the plot because it sounds stupid. But when she goes back to that, you see the growth from where she was when she was first introduced to what she became, and then you realize how tragic her end is.
Yeah.
Even though she's alive and happy and gets married, her ending is so tragic because she doesn't even remember the Doctor anymore and can never remember the Doctor.
Yeah, because she had grown and she was investigating weirdness on her own as inspired by the Doctor.
Sure.
Yes.
That's one of the things is,
So.
the arc of the character is essential.
Yeah.
Ironically, the Doctor, his are always self-contained. He doesn't, they build a little bit other than what we've talked about, how the Time War was attempting, I think, to change that, to give him a real arc of change.
Well, no, I think you do see it some, because when you look at, for instance, Christopher Eccleston.
Yeah.
He had a definite from the Angry Doctor to the end.
And I think that was a deliberate attempt to correct that, which hadn't been done so much in the previous series.
David Tennant, he was carefree and happy.
Yeah.
And maybe a little too carefree and happy.
He started to carry around the weight of what happened to Rose.
Yes, he started carrying the... Yes, after Rose, he got more serious and withdrawn a bit. And, and then at the end... he's by himself because he's tired of seeing, losing people.
Yeah. The burden of what happens to the companions weighs on him.
So he has a definite growth. So I think honestly, I do think you see it more. It's just it's very subtle and over a longer period of time.
That's one of the corrections they made with the new series. They needed that.
Well, before I ask my last question, let's talk bourbon. So we are at Studio F here at the Baxter Building. And hitting the Woodford Double Oaked again.
Yes, sir.
And I think what we think of Woodford Double Oaked is well documented. It's good stuff.
Well, it's Robert's favorite, so I offer it for him.
And I thank you.
That's right.
So,
but you shouldn't take my bottle home with you.
I won't.
You think the Doctor would like bourbon?
It. Well, I can guarantee you the Doctor would like bourbon.
I can't see why he wouldn't. I mean, who doesn't like bourbon except Philistines?
Oh, very good. I like that. That's very good work. Yes, it's Philistines. Yes.
One of the things that I like about the companions, especially the modern ones, is they are more than just the foil.
Yeah.
They are characters unto themselves.
They spun the companions off into their own series sometimes.
Sort of, yeah.
Sarah Jane.
I mean, Sarah Jane had hers, but she got a series after just one comeback, which is great. Seeing her back in that episode with David Tennant in the Rose season, or the Martha season, I mean, was fantastic. And that led to a spin-off. Captain Jack got his Torchwood spin-off.
Yep.
Yeah, which is good stuff. Yeah.
Which is good stuff.
Very
That's
hard.
really the only two that have had true spin-offs. I wish Torchwood would come back because Captain Jack Harkness is just awesome.
Yeah, he was.
He was phenomenal.
That enabled them to do some seriously adult stories, which Doctor Who is still intended to be palatable for children, even though it's not written for children. It's always there, knowing that they're out there as part of it. They're not going to do anything particularly skirted the line a little bit occasionally, but it's never going to be an adult-oriented theme.
Right, not like Torchwood.
Torchwood was absolutely that. Yeah, and some of those, especially the 2 miniseries as they did at the end, were beyond dark. Oh my God, those Children of Earth. I only watched it once. I will never watch that again. And it was a great story, but it was disturbing. It was disturbing, and I know that was the intention. But sorry, maybe that's why. Maybe it's why they only got that one more after that.
Maybe.
And didn't come back.
I said those are the only two, but the character of Gwen, her ancestor, appeared in an early season, and she appeared then in Torchwood.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Same actress.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I like what they do with the companions a lot, mainly because in a way you're right, they are us in it. Because what kid doesn't dream about that sort of situation?
Flying off with the Doctor.
Being Captain America's sidekick, for instance.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. That's
why Robin and Bucky and these other things were created.
So being having these companions and having ones that he interacts with as an equal in the new series, far more so than any of the old ones. They were. It got better as time went on, but
some were better than others,
and some were definitely better than others. But and bringing on multiple companions, and sometimes the mother, which was just some great comic relief with David Tennant. And Christopher Eccleston too, because he was adamant from the very beginning, no mothers. But seeing what happened to them and how they changed the Doctor, I think is probably the best part about the show. Every time one leaves, it's always a sad thing. Martha probably is my least favorite of them because she was a little too unrequited love for me.
Yeah, they've discovered thou shalt not have the companion fall in love with the Doctor much. But they don't.
But the Doctor, it's truly unrequited.
Yeah,
the Doctor had absolutely no interest in her.
And it gets painful, but they wrote her out well to the point where she got somebody at the end and said, okay.
And it was Mickey.
Yeah, it was Mickey.
Rose's original boyfriend.
That's right, yeah. So
Mickey Smith.
That's right. It kind of works Ricky. Out. That's right, Ricky in the alternate universe. Yes. No, it's not Mickey, it's Ricky.
Yes. But anyway. And that's what the Doctor kept calling him originally. That's why they did that. So.
Yeah, okay.
All right. I'm sorry. No,
I was just going to say, the companions, when they cross over, I think it's even more interesting.
Yeah.
We really only saw Clara, and you get to see Martha a bit, Billie Piper's Rose, and Martha a little bit, but. Well, actually, no. Martha only interacted with David Tennant.
That's right. She only
interacted with David Tennant. So really, Rose and Clara are the only ones that have any kind of crossover.
Usually, when you change Doctors and Captain Jack, but he was never a real companion.
Well, he was.
He was a spot in and spot out.
Right, but usually they change both. But every once in a while, in the new ones, they're letting the companions bridge.
And that's only because
Matt Smith to Peter Capaldi.
So and that worked out. That was one that they did because Clara had only had, I think, was it 1 year? Maybe it was 2 years. With Matt Smith. I think it was one. I think it's just one season.
One and a half.
I'm pretty sure. So they're not gonna, they're not gonna write her out. Jenna Coleman is really fantastic, so they're gonna let her run through that a little bit.
She's a great actress. She's been in some other things. And
her work in Victoria as Queen Victoria. Oh my God, folks, that is just one of the best series. If you get a chance to watch it, I think it's 4 seasons. Maybe it's only 3.
I like her bossiness. Her, doctor's not going to get away with anything, whether it was Matt Smith or Peter Capaldi.
That's right. It worked very, very well.
And there was a little bit of the unrequited thing with them, but it was just a very minor flirtation.
Yeah, it wasn't a really serious thing like that. I mean, it had been done before because Sarah Jane was both the third Doctor and the 4th Doctor. But you're right. Most of the time, they change the Doctor. They're changing companions too.
But I like the difference. When you have the companion,
you get to do a lot with the character that way.
And honestly, I think the companions have some great arcs. I thought Clara's arc was pretty good. I liked the way it ended. A lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
All right, so last question, and I'll try to keep you guys to just 5 minutes on this one.
Right.
But I've always wondered...
I better go first.
I've always wondered...
Aren't you hilarious? Ha, ha, ha. 'Tis to laugh.
Sorry.
We tend to steal our TV shows from the British quite a bit. Friends is stolen from the Brits.
Is it? What was the Friends?
I think it's called coupling in Britain.
Oh, no. Coupling was after Friends, I'm pretty sure. And coupling did come to America as a and it was horrible.
It pushed across some boundaries of teen consensual sex on screen. And they got it pulled, if I remember right. I think I'm talking about the same thing. It was in America.
That's not in any of the British scripts.
No. It's the American issue.
The first episode of Coupling was lifted directly from the British version because the British version of Coupling is phenomenal, absolutely brilliant.
Life on Mars, one of my favorite shows, was it was only 1 season. Here, it was really good. I mean, Harvey Keitel was in it.
But Top Gear tried to adapt to the U.S. I think, Friends is adapted from something else. The Office is easy. So there's lots. Is it possible to do an American version of the Doctor?
No.
Why would you want to at this point? Because
it's too unique.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's already here.
Well, now wait a minute. We say that, but that's not entirely true. That it's impossible.
No, it's not impossible
because there was a show. Does it Time Slip?
Time Tracks?
No. I think it was Time Slip. I have to look it up. But it was Americans had created a time machine.
Tunnel.
No. This is just recent, a few years ago.
Oh, just recent. Oh.
And they traveled throughout history chasing the bad guys who were trying to rewrite history. And occasionally, when they came back, history would get rewritten.
I do remember this.
And it only had a couple of seasons, but it was great.
It was really good. I remember watching that.
Yeah.
And to a degree, DC Legends of Tomorrow is doing some of the same kind of thing.
Yes. And that's about as close as you're going to get to the Doctor thing.
But, there's no direct rip-off. And I say rip-off, not being...
I just think it would be so hard because, I couldn't even think of how you would do the TARDIS. There's no such thing as a police box in the U.S. So.
Never has been. Yeah.
Well, if you're going to start from the ground up, start from the ground up. But BBC owns character. They're not, and they're making.
They would sue like crazy.
Well, they'll never allow it.
No.
See,
even if you try and copy it,
it would have been something. If you cut them in.
Well, if you license it,
Well, that's what they tried to do with the '96 movie. Because it was going to be made here in the U.S.
That's right. Yeah. That was an attempt at that.
Because they were looking to expand the market.
Because Fox was just a brand new network at the time. That's where it premiered on. And they were needing some good content. So they were able to license this.
Yes. Fox in the 90s could have pulled it off.
It almost did. In fact, believe it or not, the show that they ended up settling for in place of that was Space Above and Beyond. Which you guys remember very well, fondly. I think it's only 1 season, but damn, it was some of the best sci-fi.
It was.
It really was great. That was one of those things that maybe that's its own episode. We could.
It could be. There were so many great episodes. Angriest Angel is still one of my favorite
sci-fi shows of all. Yeah. It's fantastic. That's something we need to watch because I bet you've not watched it. Yeah, it's a 2-part episode. We'll get you there.
I don't think it's replaceable. Partially because it has that built into itself. Mm-hmm. So, if you want to do a new Doctor Who, you just you just recast it.
You just recast.
I mean, and it is so tied to Great Britain culturally with the police box.
The police box and the costuming, and
it's just become part of it now.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody dressed like the Doctor in the U.S., you wouldn't go anywhere near him. But in Britain, this is like, oh, well, look, he's just kind of a weird curmudgeon. Look. So let's go find out what's going on.
Well, you could dress weird in the U.S., but it would just be different. They would pick a different type of costume. Although Peter Capaldi had some fairly generic.
Yeah, fairly tame. Yeah, he didn't look.
Which was fine.
Matt Smith wasn't particularly odd either.
Well, neither was Tennant. Tennant just
it's a suit, but it's kind of an old-fashioned suit.
It's a little old-fashioned. It was very very tight, very rumpled.
The waistcoat kind of deal.
See, but the American audiences have gotten used to Doctor Who now because he's mass market since 2005.
Oh yeah.
That was now. If you asked that question before then, well, yeah, maybe it could have been done. Like I said, they tried it and it didn't work.
But they still did it as the Doctor.
But that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think you could, steal it in the sense that we're going to do a knockoff. It's not like with Star Trek and the Orville. The Orville is the best Star Trek I've seen in years.
Integrate, it is.
It really is. It's phenomenal. Even with the comedic aspects underpinning it. It's good sci-fi.
It is. It's
really
very good.
Is.
They did. I'll give Seth MacFarlane a lot of credit because some of those episodes are very serious.
Yeah.
Very. Very.
The invasion of the androids. I forget the episode. If it was a cliffhanger for. I guess it was a cliffhanger or end of season 1 or middle of season 2. I forget. But it was basically the best of both worlds. The Borg episode.
Yeah.
But done right.
Wow.
Or done well. Now, granted, technology-wise, it's a lot. Easier to do that stuff now, but it is. It's just really good. So certain things you can do because they're generic enough concepts because they're building on things that already existed. Exploring. The Starship Enterprise is nothing more than a sailing vessel. That Christopher Columbus brought to the shores
it's
of America.
Nina Pinta Santa Maria.
Yeah. Well, it was Kirk was often modeled on Horatio Hornblower.
Yeah.
So.
Whereas the Doctor, it's totally new, in the sense that there is nothing like it before, and really nothing like it since. That it's at least as successful. There may have been attempts to do knockoffs, but I don't think anybody could do it well.
Yeah. I just always thought it would have been interesting to have tried to do an Americanized version of the program,
96
licensed and everything, and set it in New York or Boston or something.
That's what would have. That's what Paul McGann would have found himself at had that series gotten greenlit. I'm kind of glad it didn't because I don't know that it could have survived. Whereas maybe a couple years, maybe so. McGann's pretty damn good. It depends on who the writers were.
Well, Fox would have given it enough rope to try to make it because they needed the
maybe. But Fox, and we all know this, was notorious for canceling things very quickly. Firefly is just the obvious example. That was before that.
Yeah.
So Fox was not the place you wanted to have a long-lived series at that time. You just didn't.
Well,
that's changed now.
You could make the argument most of the ones they canceled deserve to be canceled early.
Oh, sure. There's some of them out there, but Firefly is I suppose the exception proves the rule.
Yeah. Well, I always liked the what was the one that was based on the DC comic Human Target.
Human Target.
I liked Human Target, but it was short-lived as well. I liked Human Target because I liked Jackie Earle Haley.
Oh, I love Jackie Earle Haley.
Yeah,
Rorschach from Watchmen.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Almost all the great shows and movies are all comic-based anymore.
It's still fertile well. People have been having to come up with this stuff for so long, and they got a huge backlog of easily well done concepts.
Lucifer is based on Vertigo comic.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is and Lucifer is a fantastic show. Horrible theology at times, but sometimes it's really good theology. But it's really good, likable characters. Right. And that's the key to any good show. You got to have likable characters. Even your villain has to be likable.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, that's pretty good. That's right at an hour of Doctor Who. So I think I did a good job. I cut you off a little bit there. But yeah, it's the big deal.
It is.
It is a big deal.
Yeah.
And
love it. Absolutely love it.
Actually didn't get to do it yesterday because I took a nap in the middle of the day and then I had dinner and other things going on. But there was a marathon of Christmas specials yesterday.
Oh, well, yeah.
And the new one should have appeared last night, but I haven't checked my DVR.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because on Christmas, you got to watch those Christmas specials.
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet.
On Pluto TV, there's a Doctor Who channel running all the time. And Pluto TV is free.
That's right.
And it is some of the old stuff.
Yeah.
I flipped it on the other day, and color episodes from a long time ago were on.
Well, I'm telling you, if you could take yourself to sit down, it's worth it. Some of those stories were great.
Going to bring you.
So, Francis, buddy, what is next time?
Can you say the word hoopajube, gentlemen?
Hoopajube!
That's right. It is time. We have slipped back into that, out of the time vortex and into a place where there is a fifth Friday of the month. And we're going to talk a hoopajube, which who knows what that's going to be, although we already do know what that's going to be. We're going to talk about Generation X and why it is the greatest generation.
Yes. Generation
That
X.
pun is deliberate on my part here. Why it is so darn good. And it's no accident, folks, that, yep, that's us. Why we are so wonderful. Not just as Snakes and Otters, which we knew that already, but as a generation. As those people of a certain age. What it is that we have that is good. What is it that we have different from those who went before and those who came after. How much of that is because of where we are and how much we've lived? How much of it is just endemic to us? Who knows where we're going to go? I'm sure we're going to anoint ourselves as wonderful before it's over. But it's
Why not? It seems to be the current fad.
Yes.
That's right. Well, hey, it's the getting there. That's the fun.
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes published every Friday at noon Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a comment or review because that helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next week. Same snake time, same otter channel.